Hello. Okay, so a lot of what people have been telling me they want to see on this little channel of interesting facts and tidbits is interesting facts and tidbits. But specifically, people want to be knowing a few tips and tricks. Maybe things that you don't know if you are kind of new to Hoi 4 and you haven't rotted your brain away playing thousands of hours of it for years like me. Also, we're pretty close to 50k subs. So if you could all go down and hit the sub button for the I Sorrow Slop channel, we'll have something real special coming out for 50k subs. It may feature Boko and Wan. Okay, so this ain't going to be your normal little tips and tricks video where like, hey, just build a 25 width unit. It will help you win the battle. Now let's go ahead and give you some actual interesting tips and tricks. Alright, let's say you're playing a Germany game. Now, if you're going for a historical game or even going for the old history path, upon capitulating France, usually you'll get the option to set up Vichy. But one thing you should consider before going ahead with your historical game and setting up Vichy France and then going on to capitulate the UK is setting up a collaboration government in France. You see, if you've capitulated the French, you've got yourself the option for the triumph of France and you establish Vichy France. If you've gone ahead with your spy network and set up a full collaboration government to the point where you are at 100% and can immediately release a collab government, well, let's just say something interesting will happen. Your new collaboration government will immediately just go ahead and annex Vichy France, giving you all the land under your control, meaning you don't have to worry about losing Indochina or even having to lose potentially more land to the Free French forces. Now, I'd say that is a pretty useful tip and trick. Now, one thing I've been noticing with my Soviet games recently, with the newest DLC with the Scandinavian focus trees, is Denmark will bring you into a war with the Japanese 10 out of 10 times now. You see, when they declare their independence, for whatever reason, it just brings the Japanese in. But you can subvert that completely by simply declaring on them as a puppet. It says you'll have a potential enemies of the Japanese, but don't worry, they will never be called in. And now you don't have to worry about forgetting about garrisoning the Far East, because I've just got the NKVD over here. And the NKVD aren't exactly the best equipped for this. But yeah, there's another handy tip and trick. And now you can just go ahead and hold against the Germans and not have to worry about the Danish ruining everything in your life. Speaking of the Soviet Union, organizing your army at the start of the game can be a bit of a chore because it's quite large, and Paradox hasn't added a button that just automatically splits all your armies into 24 stacks because that would be way too useful. But you can go ahead and organize your army very, very quickly. Also, here's another trick. If you want to actually select all of the type of unit in a big stack, just double click it and boom, that will select all the units that are the same as the one you just double click. But if you want to go ahead and sort this Soviet army out, just double click all the tanks, double click all the mountaineers, double click all the NKVD units, and then you've left with a 96 stack of units right here. Split them once, split them again, split them again. Boom. Look at that. You have a perfectly sorted army, and there's the NKVD. I always stick them over here for the weird Japanese battle that happens, and never look at them again for the rest of the game. Yeah, I play a lot of Soviets game in my free time. Yeah, I play Hoi in my free time, by the way, guys. Okay, I have one more Soviet trick that isn't really a trick, it's more of a tip on how to make your Soviets game a bit different, because you can still go historical Stalin and get a lot done before 1940. Yeah, you see, a lot of people usually get a bit dismayed and kind of wait for the build-up with the Germans, but there is so much more you could do to make yourself even more powerful. So first off, let's go ahead, take our units with just the tanks and the mountaineers, and we'll get them set up over here on the Turkish. Yeah, you could go the historical route and just hold normally like the Soviets would, or you could go in way stronger than you've ever been before. So what I like to do is I like to just fight on the Turks, and that, if you can't tell, will also bring in the Romanians, who are guaranteed. Also, yeah, this is not exactly groundbreaking stuff, but just bear with me because there's still so much more you can do to become powerful. Okay, we've got our justification for the Turks, but as we're actually about to declare on it, we're also going to justify on the Spanish Civil War. We could do do either side, but I think we're going to go with the one that's clearly not going to be on our side. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead. We're going to go in on the Turks. We are not going to bother even touching the Romanians until after we've dealt with the Turks. And with our starting units over here, the Mountaineers and the tanks, there should be no problem, along with the naval invasion. We just want to grab each side of the strait, and that will actually make our landing way easier too. Yeah, Turkey will collapse pretty much instantaneously, and then you just want to micro their 10 bazillion victory points to get them capitulated. Nice! Now for the peace deal, usually I will just puppet them all, don't care that much, take all their resources, and take all their factories, and that's all you really want to do. There you go. So we already now have a pretty powerful puppet down here on top of a whole bunch of chromium and other resources that are pretty helpful for the Soviets. Okay, now the Romanians, I'm usually too lazy to ever actually do anything tactical here. The front line usually will break through pretty easily with your starting air force. But yeah, you want to get them capitulated pretty quickly so that we can go save the Spanish. Okay, same deal goes with Romania. Just gonna take everything from them, keep them as a puppet, and they are now a fortress and shorten our front line with the Germans and the Axis so damn much. Yeah, why bother sending volunteers to the Spanish Civil War when I just bring the entire Soviet army? Now, you can pick who you really want to help out more here, or you can just take all the land for yourself, but if you want to get military access, either ask for the Spanish Republicans or the anarchists. It'll flip the land to them from wherever you push. I'm going to go the Republicans, just because I find them to be easier on the game. And then, yeah, just go whack your army over there, maybe keep it a bit consolidated, because, again, you won't have the best supply over here, as you're only going to have military access, so you can't bring planes or anything, and just destroy them. Yeah, it's definitely very cheap to do to win the old Civil War, but it is so damn powerful. You could obviously reverse this as well, do this as the Germans and switch sides, but the most important thing about all these starter wars is that you just get so much army XP. So by the time it comes for you to actually fight the Germans, you're going to be pretty much on par with them in their doctrine. Okay, so for the actual peace conference over here, you can just let the AI take all their land back. You can actually take some yourself. You can do whatever you want. The only thing I really take is North Africa off them, just so in case I ever need to contest control of Gibraltar, you can do that. But the most important thing is just pretty much denying the Germans another Axis member, and they're getting a bit of free land in the process of that as well. Not too bad. Okay, and last but not least, when you do eventually go in on Finland, just take them all. Don't accept the surrender. There you go. That means simply if the Germans actually do take out Norway, you don't have to worry about the front up there as well. You can just satellite the Finns and boom, you don't have to worry about them coming back in on you, and you don't have to worry about that entire front. Oh yeah, and of course you get all their resources and all their factories. So I guess if you followed all those steps, you should have a absolutely gigantic industry, gigantic army, loads of safe wiggle room, and a bunch of puppets to fall back on if you need them. Like I said, you don't have to do just that. You can do other stuff. You can get a full collab on the Polish so that when you take this land as part of the deal, you can release them immediately and not have to worry about the Germans even pushing through there. You can flip Hungary to communists so you don't have to worry about them with your spies. There is so much to do. Just don't sit around and do nothing, because every Soviet game will be the same otherwise. Use the time you have to become the biggest man with the mustache in the room. So that was just a few tips on playing a specific nation, but let's get some more generic ones. Okay, so let's say you're a nation that starts off with some pretty dire war support, or even more dire as you go on and you switch leaders to Neville Chamberlain. Because as a smaller nation, or even a allied nation, it is hard to get that war support up, but there are a few little tricks you can do to get it going a bit in the right direction. First off, something you can do if you haven't is set yourself a Pride of the Fleet. This will go ahead and give you an extra 5% war support. Another really easy one, especially I guess as the UK in this scenario, is to get a whole bunch of political powers saved up, wait for the Spanish Civil War to go ahead, send them a attaché. You need to improve your relations if you haven't already, and this will give you a whopping 10% war support on top of all the experience you'll be getting from the attaché, which means you can immediately just go straight up to partial mobilization in 1936. So just from getting ourselves a Pride of the Fleet and a attaché, we've got ourselves a extra 15% of war support, which is usually enough to get most starting nations up to at least partial. Which means you can be a bit more proactive with your factories at the start of the game, especially if you really need that boost. Here's another one for if you don't like rubber, but you love planes. So converting equipment in Hoi 4 is extremely useful, on top of the fact that you also get 2 buffs over here for equipment conversion, and usually some nations do have specific equipment conversion ones in their focus tree. It can get pretty overpowered. Good example being planes. Usually they're pretty expensive and resource heavy, but if you were to create a very cheap plane with a pretty cheap production cost, and were just to spam out enough that you're making roughly about 1 a day, and then made an actual plane you're going to use, which is, that's quite a lot. 24 production cost, but the conversion cost only 2.5. It tends to add up that you can pretty much spam out a whole bunch of planes without the need for rubber. Here's our cheap plane with no rubber. We've still got quite a bit of production going with the lack of resource penalty, but if we were to create our actual one, it wouldn't be as beautiful. But if we were just to convert our old cheap planes instead, look at that. Suddenly we don't need no damn rubber on those tires. It's pretty useful, especially if you're in a pinch with rubber. And on top of that, you don't really have to worry too much about upkeeping this. You just need to make sure the amount of planes you're building for your crappy ones are higher than the amount you're converting. That way you can just sit back, relax as your brand new spanking planes come out with no tires and somehow are the best damn planes ever. Yeah, just for a quick idea on how you actually do converting, by the way, make sure that the plane you are building is the old plane, so go ahead and hit the decommission button right there. Boom. And that the new plane that you wish to convert to is up to date. Everything is on it, and it's the only plane you should have. And then get a line of that going and hit the convert button down here. But yeah, to make the most of this, you do really want to get those 2 conversion techs, as that will speed up the process on how this is efficient enough. It still can be efficient without those techs, but not as efficient as if you did have it. Oh yeah, also this only works for planes built on the same model. So if you want to go ahead and do it for your older ones, don't even bother, just delete them straight away. Start building your new planes as soon as you can. So next up we have one that isn't exactly a secret. It's adding tanks and creating super divisions. You see, the AI is not too good at dealing with armor, and you can actually get your armor up pretty high in an infantry division simply by putting a light tank in per se. This has already got us up to 54 armor. Now, because it is a percentage of the division, so if you look down here, you can see if I add another light tank, it won't just double the amount of armor I have. So realistically, all you need is 1 tank in a unit to give it the armor buff, which means you can actually just go ahead and create really cheap light tanks in this scenario specifically, put a ton of armor in them, and well, there you go. You now have a really powerful bit of armor on your unit. This is 1940. This is the AI. This is the division they're using. It's not too bad. 35 piercing, 47 hard attack, but they need the piercing to actually get through my armor, which is actually less than the armor I have. So as you can see, the AI isn't very good at making divisions that can get a good amount of piercing. Also, I gotta realize I've also got some armored cars in there. That's the first time someone's used armored cars. Alright, so we've gone ahead. We've moved to the Soviets, so the AI still, and we're going to go ahead and get the first heavy tank, the second armored upgrade, and see what we can make and how much armor we can get with just those things. Now, again, it doesn't really matter what's in the unit, so we want to make this thing as cheap as humanly possible. A good idea would be putting some AA in there, because that is actually pretty useful. Then we're going to whack as much armor as we can on there. I usually go with of welded over cast because this does give a production cost modifier, so we'll do that. Again, this isn't anything revolutionary. It's probably the least known thing I'm going to be talking about today, but we've also got the sloped armor on the armor skirts. We've moved it to anti-air, and look at that, 144 armor. 144 armor and 17 production costs. We could knock this down a whole bunch more, get 117 armor, but, you know, we'll keep it a bit realistic. Maybe you've been building these things for a while. There you go. Adding that to our brand new unit will whack our armor all the way up to 63. So high, I don't think the AI will ever be able to pierce it. There you go. Spammed out a whole bunch of those tanks. 22 a day with 94 factories on. That's kind of disgusting. And the AI cannot do anything. It is a little bit ridiculous how powerful these things become just on the armor value being added, but it does make holding just incredibly easy. But there you go. Those are some tips and tricks that can help you out quite a bit in Hoi 4. At least better ways to play the game, better ways to enjoy the game, and probably stuff you may not have thought of. I'm sure some of you have because you're quite smart, and you'll let me know down in the comments that you already knew all of these. Get good, Slop. But yeah, that was Slop for today. I'll see you all at some point. Not today, though, because you already just saw me today. Unless you're going to go watch another video by me. I mean, there's one on the screen right now. Maybe you should click this one. That looks good. Also, hit the sub button. Goodbye.